Lucy, and she loves me.
For so many years, she made us laugh, and no doubt years from now, she still will. But tonight, she's making us cry. If there's a special spot in heaven for the clowns, open the gates. This time, Lucy has no splaining to do.
When we return, we'll talk about Lucille Ball with two pretty fair comedians themselves, Sid Caesar and Jerry Lewis.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Toyota.
William Paley said, "With I Love Lucy, she helped establish television as the nation's leading entertainment medium. Lucy's extraordinary ability to light up the screen and brighten our lives is a legacy that will last forever." An old friend of Lucy's, former President Reagan, had this to say.
I think it's a great tragedy, and all of us are affected. She was a friend. We loved her dearly, and she's truly going to be missed.
Lucy was so much a part of our cultural experience, she was even the subject of a music video parody.
Oh, Lucy, you're so fine, you blow my mind, hey, Lucy!
So, at age 77, Lucille Ball is dead. But so long as there is a TV tube glowing somewhere on this globe, Lucy will live on. So, it isn't goodbye, Lucy. It's just so long. Charles Feldman, CNN, New York.
That took, doing it live, no matter what she did, she slipped, she fell, she got hit with a pie. She always kept her femininity, and she was always a lady. That's the beautiful part.
Is this something that someone like Lucille Ball, who after all was a movie star and a radio star, had to really work on again and again to get that kind of timing to make it look so effortless?
No, I think she was a natural. She absolutely was a real natural. She had timing. She didn't have to learn it. It was there.
And yet it would seem that to be that physical in front of an audience implies an enormous sense of trust between the audience and yourself, because you're not getting by on a funny line or a wisecrack.
That's true, and you're not getting by on a laugh track. Is right. It was live, and the laughter you heard was the real laughter, and nobody had to tell you if you were hit or not. You knew immediately if you were going over or not going over. So, and she was, well, what can I say? She could take a pie in the face and still be a lady.
Jerry Lewis, Lucille Ball, like yourself, was a behind-the-screens presence. You are a director and a writer and a producer. Lucille Ball was a studio owner. How do you keep the on-screen sense of, if I can use the term, a clown, so that the audience suspends its disbelief and still sees this very strong-willed woman as this kind of rather helpless child woman? That must take an enormous sense in the performer, him or herself, to pull that off.
Well, the joy was that it was such a pleasure, and it was such a relief not to be burdened by the responsibilities of executive, writer, producer, director, that when you got to be the actor, the freedom of that comedy was so childlike and with such an abandon that she had that, as I say, freedom to be the Lucy that we remember and love so much.
Was there a sense back in those first days of television that the fact that for the first time an audience at home could see comedy rather than listen to it on the radio made its impact that much more special, that they could actually see you, Lucy, Milton Berle, acting physical?
Well, that was the joy of television. We finally got rid of visual hi-fi, which was radio. Or, for that matter, those cerebral combatants that would stand before the television camera and just talk. Lucy was the forerunner, with Milton Berle, of course, that taught us all to do the visual things that were part of the medium called television. Mm-hmm. Not TV, television.
But it also seems that you and Sid Caesar and Lucille Ball drew from that tradition of the circus clown, willing to play the fool in order to not only to make us laugh, but to touch us in a way. There's something about that humor, it seems to me, that's much more visceral, much more powerful than the wittiest line you could deliver from a writer.
Well,
go ahead, Sid and then Jerry, sure.
I'm sorry. Jerry?
Go ahead, Sid.
What it was is that to me, it was a natural. We didn't know how to perform for television because it was brand new. And it was just be yourself, and what you saw is what you got. And that, to me, is... the audience didn't just observe television. They watched television. They were part of it because they knew anything could happen because it was live. And because it was live, it was like a football game. There's only three things you can do with a ball: throw it, kick it, or run with it. But will he fumble it? Will he do it? Will he this? Will he this? Will he pass it? Will he catch it? Will he don't? That's the wonderful thing. That's the dimension I think that is missing today, is the fact that it is live, the fact that anything can go wrong.
Jerry, you wanted to get in on that point I was making about the nature of that comedy, why it seems so to touch us so much.
Well, I think Sid said it all, with the exception of one point. Lucy learned during the incubation period. She learned from what she was doing that that's what had to be done in order to get through to the audience, that we were indeed in a visual medium. So she captured the visual concept and turned the audible concept into visual and made it work for her. I don't know that she knew it instinctively. Yes. I don't think that she knew it intellectually. Mm-hmm. None of us knew it intellectually. We all worked based on instinct because it was the beginnings.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a break, and we're going to continue our discussion about Lucille Ball and about television in just a minute.
What's fair is fair. And frankly, Bryce Pfister is the fairest faucet of them all.
Friday, Tom Jarrell's dangerous journey to meet the king of heroin in the jungles of Burma and bring back his incredible offer. Watch 2020 Friday.
Tomorrow, organically grown food. Is it worth the extra cost?
Also, Surgeon General C. Everett Koop and James Woods coming up on Good Morning America tomorrow.
Continuing our look back at Lucille Ball now with Jerry Lewis and Sid Caesar. Jerry, you knew Lucy for 40 years. I guess everybody calls her Lucy. She was a power in Hollywood as the co-owner of a major studio. Did she reflect that in private? Was this the kind of person who enjoyed wielding that kind of power?
No, not at all. Lucy was a very, very plain lady, and she never, ever alluded to her power in terms of owning a studio. She was a comic, a clown, and couldn't wait to get on. If you went to a party and you saw Lucille sitting in the corner, and if you knew nothing about television, you'd think it was a plain lady, just a pretty lady seated there. Gary probably would be seated next to her, and you'd never know it was her. She was very low-key. When she got on the set, she was very high-key. She was a perfectionist and wanted to do the best work she possibly could do. And that only prevailed in her work. As a woman and as a lady, she was just a plain lady, very private, somewhat of a recluse, until she had to go out into the public. And when she did, she went out with a fanfare.
Is that how she was able to play this rather helpless child woman, even though in real life she was far from it?
I beg your pardon?
I say, is that how she was able to portray this rather helpless child woman who couldn't go out into the workplace on the show, but in fact in real life did? I mean, she must have touched something. She was reaching for something when she played that character of Lucy Ricardo, right?
I think if you look at all great clowns, you'll find that the pattern is pretty much the same. Different upbringings, different understandings of where they come from, but in the end result, pretty much the same. She came from whatever her upbringings were, manifested itself in her work, as you will see with any clown. Clown is a different thing than a monologist. We're talking about a clown now, and she was indeed a clown.
Sid Caesar, her material was shaped in the early 1950s. There's no sex. She couldn't even use the word pregnant to describe her own condition. No politics, nothing topical. In a sense, is that what gives it its universality? That the very fact that she couldn't even think about using that kind of material made her go to broader themes?
Well, that's what we had to do. I mean, as you say, you couldn't use the word pregnant. You had to say she was with child. But the main thing was that all that material was stuff that you do every day, things that you do every day, it happens to you every day, only it's exaggerated, that's all. So people can identify with it because they know, they can feel what's going on. Oh, that's Uncle Jake, or that's Uncle Jake, or that's Aunt Tom. It's a thing that you can recognize. It was recognized immediately. So it really didn't even need jokes because they recognized it and it was exaggerated, and that's what made it funny.
What strikes me as so ironic is here's a character who is really a throwback. I mean, they made jokes out of the very fact that she tried to go to work, and you had that classic scene in the candy factory and many others. And yet it works for a generation for whom, you know, there are women on the Supreme Court, there are women running for vice president. How does that translate 35 years later into laughter that we can all recognize?
Because women still take care of houses and still take care of children and still take care of it. And I think it's imbued in the public that they know what she's doing and what she was doing. Because you do the same thing today. If you take a girl out, you still get embarrassed, you're still on the first date, and it still holds true. It's like going to the movies with a girl and try to get your arm around, just to get your arm around her, it took an hour and a half. And and people still know it today because it still happens.
Jerry Lewis, let me ask you, if Lucille Ball were young today and came to today's television world with all its polling and its research and said, I got an idea for this show. It's a woman homemaker married to a Cuban band leader. Could this show get on the air today?
I don't know. I really don't know. But I will tell you one thing, that Lucille Ball's work had nothing to do with feminism, had nothing to do with politics, the question that you would ask Sid. It had to do with a simple premise, and we mustn't miss this premise. This was a funny broad. She was a funny lady. She did funny things. She made the American consciousness step down from its dreams of sanctimony or whatever and just laugh. She was a plain, funny lady. And I have to add to that, that in the people that I've seen pass on in these last few years of my life, Fred Astaire, Orson Welles, there's never been coverage like this. Why? There's never been coverage by the media. Never. I have been inundated today by phone calls from every wire service, from every network, national and local, to talk about this great clown, Lucille Ball. What does that tell you? It tells it all to you.
Yes, it does.
She was magic. And she was magic because she made the people in Bangladesh forget they were hungry. That's what comedy is. I didn't mean to get on the soapbox, but I had to say that.
No, it's a good way to top this off. Jerry Lewis and Sid Caesar, two of the great comedians, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We will be back in a moment with an important word about tomorrow's Nightline and a special Koppel report. ABC News will present a special report on the extraordinary explosion of drug use and violence in Washington, D.C. We'll look at how the people of Washington are coping and focus on evidence that the nation's capital remains a segregated city to this day. Our programming begins with the Koppel Report, D.C. Divided City, in prime time from 10 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll resume at 11:30 with a special edition of Nightline. Among our guests, Washington Mayor Marion Barry, Federal Drug Czar William Bennett, Housing and Urban Development Secretary Jack Kemp, and Georgetown University basketball coach John Thompson. That's our report for tonight. I'm Jeff Greenfield in New York. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been ABC News Nightline. If you wish a printed transcript of this or any Nightline broadcast, please send $3 to 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007, or call area code 212-227-READ.
Presentation of ABC News, where more Americans get their news than from any other source.
When I was a kid, my mother would read me the greatest stories.
Mourn, but also to celebrate the career of the woman known as the queen of situation comedy. Lucy and her late husband, Desi Arnaz, starred in I Love Lucy from 1951 to 1957. And they have been in syndicated reruns ever since. Lucy divorced Arnaz in 1960 and married Gary Morton in 1961. But the laughs never stopped. She remained on TV for 12 more years, starring in the weekly programs Here's Lucy and The Lucy Show. Her ratings went up and down throughout her career, but on the day she died, Lucy was #1 in the hearts of her peers.
She knew what she wanted, and she knew comedy. And she's the first lady of comedy. I mean, she's I don't know what to say.
Lucy was the first one to come along who had all the pantomimic attributes of Chaplin, and at the same time was quite an appealing female at the same time. And she was a great clown.
She was a natural comedian. She was funny off stage, too.
This is really a sad day for me. Lucille Ball is gone. And I just spoke to her husband, Gary Morton, the other day. He said she was feeling fine. But what can you do? The guy knocks on your door and gives you back your pictures. You gotta leave. But there's one thing that's nice. Lucy is gone, but she'll always be with us. I love Lucy. Everybody loves Lucy.
No matter how many tears we cry today, the laughs outnumber them. I love Lucy.
Memorial services for Lucille Ball are now being planned.
A Chicago man walked into a hospital with a gun Wednesday.